In the beginning, God created. Then he created man in his own image. Then man created. Those who know him then are creative Christians. Today we're going to talk to best-selling Christian author Lauraine Snelling. Laraine began living her dream to be a writer with her first published book for young adult readers, Tragedy on the Tootle, back in 1982. She has since continued writing more horse books for young girls, adding historical and contemporary fiction and nonfiction for adults and young readers to her repertoire. All totaled, she has over 125 books published with more than 5 million copies in print. Laraine writes about real issues of forgiveness, loss, domestic violence, and cancer within a compelling story. Her work has been translated in Norwegian, Danish, and German. She has won the Romantic Times Career Achievement Award for inspirational fiction, the Silver Angel Award for An Untamed Land, and a Romance Writer of America Golden Heart for The Song of Laughter. In 2012, due to her Norwegian heritage and the many novels she's written about Norwegians immigrating to America, Laraine was inducted into the Scandinavian American Hall of Fame. And she's my neighbor, which is even better. Here is Lauraine Snelling. Hey, how are you?
Long time since I've seen you.
I know, golly.
You'd
I
think
wish
we
I
were.
could come by every day and just bother you all day long. How
Oh,
you doing? How you bearing up?
well, as far as I can tell, I'm not getting the work done I need to get done, but I'm managing. And I guess and I know that where that's from because sometimes I've been so tired, but as we're doing this, he's been home for 2 months now. I'm getting into some kind of a routine. We're talking about him going back in for more PT.
Uh-huh.
And he doesn't want to do that, but I'm hoping he will decide that that's the best way to get where we want to go.
Okay.
So yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, I know this has to be a terrible time. How's his attitude and his uh,
Well, you know, he's always so very quiet.
yeah.
And some days he talks more than others. But one of the doctors that I spoke with who knows the history and everything, he said there's the COVID went into C. diff, which is a bad bacteria
Oh,
that tries to destroy everything else in the body.
oh my
And
goodness.
so that's what he ended up with. They got that taken care of, but that doctor said it takes a long time to recover from C. diff. And I said, well, we've been at this 3 months. And he said, it takes a long time.
Wow.
So I didn't try to nail him down any more than that because I figured he doesn't know because every person's different.
Yeah. Yeah. I know my wife had it and it went into her lungs. And so she ended up with what they call COVID lungs. And so she's very susceptible to pneumonia and things like that. So
Right.
we have to of course watch, what we're doing and so forth. Well, I really appreciate, you're taking your time to
Well, when you
visit
do
me
this right
today.
now, when I've got 2 books that have come out in the last 4 months, I think this is pretty cool.
Oh, well, let's talk about your 2 books. Just to let you know, I just got finished recording your introduction, and what I'll do is send that over to you so you can hear what I've said about you. And whatever I said about you wasn't enough. I mean, you're just, ever since I moved up here and we met, I don't know how many years ago, but you've been an inspiration to me, I'll tell you.
Oh, thank
Uh,
you.
tell me about your books that you have coming out.
Okay, well, the first one came out in June, and this is book 2 in the series.
Yeah.
And ever since I finished the Red River series with the last of the Ingeborg books, which was Vows to Cherish, I've been trying, I've done others, but my
Yeah.
goal always is to not write Ingeborg again.
Ah.
And so anyway, you know me and flowers. And Wendy, my agent, and I had talked about it, about what about if we created a series that had sisters building a business, of flowers back in right after post-Civil War.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we came up with that, and we've got 4 sisters who are all named with flowers because their mother was such a flower lover. They were from Ohio, and it's fun because I had so much fun with the opening. This was so much fun. There's
tell
a
me
really
about
bad
it if
guy.
you can.
It was so much fun.
I'm dying to see what you're having fun with. Yeah.
Well, you probably don't know, but anyway, I always have trouble getting enough conflict in a book because I want everybody to be happy.
Yeah.
That's boring after a while. So
anyway, a dog has to bite somebody, so that's what it works.
Right. Well, the younger brother in the family comes to his oldest sister, who is a math genius. But she doesn't really know that, but she just knows. She knows math. Numbers behave for her, not for me. Words behave for me. And so anyway, the younger brother, he's the baby of the family, and had 4 older sisters and an older brother, and he was the baby. And that just says a lot for families. And anyway, he loves to gamble, and she taught him how to gamble because they were in the middle of the winter. They'd be in the house and they were playing poker, and the family just had fun with it. But so she taught him. Well, he gets in trouble. He's too young. He's not even 18 yet. He's too young to be at the bar anyway, or the saloon. But he's gotten in trouble over there, and the dealer has said, I got it all. And so he goes running to his sister, who just says, I can't do it. But she'd already been in a fight at church, and she was already mad at everybody. And so she finally just thought, yeah, and she would just put on the Miss Priss, And so she walked into the saloon, and she was just being very sweet and darling, and met the gambler, and he thought, well, that was so much fun to write. The fight at the church was fun to write too. And then she is storming down the end. So anyway, she just takes him to the cleaners and gets all the money back that the others that were there left. And a neighbor of theirs is there too, and he's just cheering her on. And they're gambling, and she said, well, I'm not sure. She really played it to the hilt and took everything of his and left him his horse and his saddle, which he was not kind enough to do to somebody else. And they left, and they got home, and Anders, the oldest brother, said, what have you done now? And you have, and the neighbor who was there with it said, you've got to get out of town. He threatened you, and he's going to come after you. And so that's why the 4 sisters headed west, and Lark, the oldest sister, became Clark. And so it was a brother and 3 sisters that headed west.
Yeah.
And so they got as far as Nebraska and decided they liked that and didn't want to try to go over the mountains yet and they landed in southeast Nebraska before it was a state, and it was a territory. So anyway, this is book 2, and book 1 was Seeds of Change. Book 2 now is A Time to Bloom, and I love this cover. And this is the
Isn't
second
that
oldest
gorgeous?
sister. Isn't it just I
Do you
saw
get,
this cover in the mock-up and I said, I just love it.
do you get a chance to meet the people that do the covers?
Yes, this is from Bethany, and I've been with
Oh,
Bethany for so many years.
Bethany does some wonderful covers.
They do, and they have always given me beautiful covers.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, this is the second sister, and she's going to teach school. The school marm leaves, and they need a teacher. So she said, "Okay, they bought land, they homesteaded, they've done all that." And so she goes to work teaching at the school, and other people come to town, and it's just a fun book to read, and people have
Oh, it
just
sounds great.
with it.
Is
And
that one that's coming out? When is that coming out?
this one came out in June.
Oh,
So
it's already
one and
out.
two are already out, yes. And this one, everybody's raving about it, and I'm raving about it. And it starts with the cover, and the story is their brother comes out and brings a friend of his from the Civil War. We've got we've got the dregs of the Civil War going on, so there's conflict with that all the time too. And so anyway, he brings his friend RJ, who lost one eye in the lost an eye in the war. So anyway, it's the dregs of the Civil War. It's these four sisters making it without a man basically to help them. No, I'm not going to tell you what happened in the first book, but
in the wilds of Nebraska, they're doing all
yeah,
this.
on the Wagons West. That's the major story is Wagons West.
Wow.
Then this one just came out the end of August, and
Florence Legacy.
the Florence Legacy, and this every one of my stories, Bill, always has a story behind the story.
Yeah,
I gotta hold this up so we can really see it here.
that's gorgeous.
And this one, there is a story behind the story, and I tell that story in the book. But the book then is taking the real story and turning it into fiction. So I created characters and other parts of the story that are not true, but they're true to these characters. And so four friends go to Italy, and because there was an inheritance, and so the main character Brianna can finally afford to go, and she's always wanted to go see the David. And so the four of them, they plan this trip, they do all the wonderful things, and then at a funeral of her friend's husband, best neighbor's husband, she meets a brother of her best friend, and so he's out of the military, and he is trying to set up a coffee shop that benefits the vets, and employs vets and all of that kind of stuff, and try to see what he can do to help rectify some things. And so he's here, he's in Vancouver, Washington, doing all that and working with her family, and she's in Italy and having an incredible time. And by the way, I saw the David, and it was my dream that happened. And
No kidding.
And that was just one of my dreams.
What part of Italy are you in here?
We flew into Rome, traveled up through, did a cooking school in one part of Italy, and then went on over to Florence, and then out of blank mind. It wasn't my favorite city. Not Venus. I keep thinking, but no, Venice. There we go.
Venice.
Out of Venice.
And I get mixed reviews out of Venice.
Yeah,
some people just love it. Some people can't stand the smell. I mean, it's a weird thing.
It's a weird thing, but Florence, I would go back to in a heartbeat. And I got to see the Vatican, and that was another dream that I had always wanted to see the Vatican.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. When did you take that trip?
In 2017.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And so then finally the book was already contracted, and life got in the way, and I couldn't write it right then. And And so finally, when I wrote it, I just thought, I don't want to write that book. I don't want to write that book. I don't want to. And authors get that way sometimes, you know. I don't
Oh
really.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And so once
Uh,
we started writing this book, had an absolute ball writing it. Loved the story, loved the characters. God knows what he's doing, and he just, I don't always, well, listen real well.
ah. Okay. Now, let's just take this one for instance. You go to Italy, you do the things you dreamed of doing, maybe throw a coin in the fountain,
I
do.
did. You bet I did.
Did you really?
You bet.
That's
In
one of my
two
favorite
fountains.
movies. I cannot not watch that movie when it's on. And those things, and then you come back and you create this world that uh, is it the world that you wish you were going into when you went in Italy, or is it something completely different?
Well, it had to be, it couldn't be a travelogue. See, it could have
Yeah,
very well
definitely.
just been a travelogue, and that'd be, yeah, ho hum. Um, and so there's, a conflict in other areas too, and somebody else gets hurt and goes home. One of the four gets hurt, go home. We did a cooking class in Burgundia. No, well, anyway, the word, and it was so much fun. That was one of my friends that went with us on that. That was her dream, was to do that. And
Yeah.
we did that, and I'd go back and do that again, and I'd go to Florence again in a heartbeat.
Oh, I wish I could send my wife to a cooking class. She just loves to cook. She
Oh, well,
just
this
loves it.
woman,
And
you
it
can go
and
on her site.
I
Tell Pat
know.
to give me that. I'll give her the information. In fact, it's in the back of the book. Is contacts for her, because she was phenomenal. The woman that gave us the tour in the Vatican was just, oh man, I could have sat at her feet for days, just picking her brain. And then a young man that was the tour guide in Florence, and the people that we did a week in their house rather than doing hotels. I mean, it was unreal, and so I had so much to write about. And so what was going on in the United States, in Vancouver, and I used to live in Vancouver, so I happen to know that pretty well. I mean, you just use everything. Anytime you write a book, and you know this, you use everything you've learned in your life, and things that have happened to you just kind of get woven in.
I know they come out of nowhere, they thoughts that you haven't thought in 10 or 15 years suddenly show up.
That's right.
It's fascinating, and there's always I always believe that God is the one writing these things,
He is.
except they're not perfect because I'm in the way. And it's just you know I don't know. It's just the head of a writer is a very messy place.
Yes,
And it's
so is
just so
so is so
much.
is this writer's office.
Yeah.
I go to people, and their office is all nice and neat and all this.
Yeah. Who are these people?
Who are you, and what are you writing? Did you anyway? But yeah,
I worked, as I was writing, I was working, and I worked in aerospace. And so I would go into this one guy's office that he had filing cabinets all over the place, but he never filed anything. Everything was in stacks, and he knew exactly where something was in that stack.
but
And that's the kind of mind that a writer has. It's just a stack of stuff. And
Jack London said, and I just love this. He says every book, because somebody asked him, how long does it take you to write a book, and
yeah,
he said 6 months in a lifetime. And when young people come, and we talk about writing, and they're pretty good writers, but they don't have this wealth of experience to draw from, that just springs up when you need it.
I know it. And I was talking to, I think it was, oh, I can't even remember now, but I was talking to somebody not long ago that, um, you know, uh, this experience that we have is um, sometimes very hard because the characters that God wants us to write about are going through some very hard things. So often the writer, you know, that life is not something some people dream about. It can be pretty tough. I mean, God forbid, you know, what you're going through right now, you know, that's going to show up if it hasn't already in one of your characters or one of your stories. It just does, because that's
It
why
has.
God puts you through things like this.
That's right. And our daughter died of cancer when just
Oh,
before she was 21. And I was writing a
I'm
series.
so sorry. I
Well,
didn't.
yes, it's been many years ago now. But that grief cycle has shown up in many of my books
I bet they
because
have.
that's part of life. And we
Yeah.
go into this thinking that that's not going to happen to me. And that's where I feel sorry for the young people yet that still think that it's not going to happen to me. Because if you think that, it's much harder to deal with when you get it. But
Oh, yeah.
who knows? We all, I think, feel that. Well, it shouldn't happen to me. I've done this and this and this. You know?
I know. I'm so good, doggone it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
God never
anyway,
do that to me.
yeah,
Golly, that's bad.
yeah.
Yeah. It
Only,
just,
only have you noticed that when the times are hardest, that's when we're closest to him?
yeah.
And boy, am
Yeah.
I aware of that.
You know, when we're clinging to him like a life preserver, uh, it's something that you never forget, and he's right there. You can almost see him, and those moments come back.
Yeah.
I've all I've always, I've said this before to people, that God, I think, gives us little miracles in life that when we, start to doubt, or when we're going through something tough, we can look back on these things where God's fingerprints have been all over our lives, and we know He's right there.
Always has been, always will be.
Yeah, He always will be. Tell me about your salvation experience. When did that happen, and how did it happen?
Well, it's interesting because I was asked that question and I was looking back and I thought, I didn't have one. I grew up. I was a baby, and I was baptized in the Lutheran church. I grew up in the church. I grew up in Sunday school. I know one year at Bible camp when I think I was 12 or 13. There was a big deepening at that point.
Mm,
But when I was confirmed at 14 and I
yeah,
had to stand before the congregation and say what my faith was, I believed every bit of it and I knew it was true. And so it's kind of it was a morphine.
yeah,
And I thought finally I realized how blessed I was that that was the way I think he wants us raised. It doesn't mean I didn't do anything wrong, that's for sure, because I sure screwed up royally through my life. Um, but there wasn't any this great big lightning. There's been incremental times of that, like a renewal, not so much a renewal as a deepening, I guess is the only thing I can
yeah,
call.
yeah.
And deepening and deepening, and the hard thing is that most of those deepenings come in the hard spots,
Oh yeah,
you know
oh yeah,
and so if I'd never had any of those things happen, I wouldn't have anything to write about. um but also I just treasure the moments that I know, and I know more, and I know deeper.
yeah. It's
And
actually seeing God at work, you know, and it's just this kind of shadow working, but it's so definite and so concrete, and yet, just you can't see it. You can't see it.
but you sure can feel it.
Oh yeah. I mean, you really can. I mean, I can remember some of his chastening, where I was
Oh yeah.
drifting away or doing stupid things, and he chastens me, and suddenly I realize I'm being chastened, and I get on my knees, and and afterwards some reward comes, and it's not like I get an ice cream cone. It's like suddenly things began to happen in my life that are just so much better than they ever were before. It's
And, and
fascinating.
it's often when it's something you failed at over and over and over again.
Yeah,
You just, and because I've had one of those recently, and I know, because obviously I tried and tried and tried and tried and tried, and it didn't, and didn't get. But when he stepped in, and I kept thinking, why didn't you do this sooner? Well, I probably wasn't ready for it sooner. So,
yeah.
but
Huh?
the one thing I know for sure is that I can talk to him and he listens and he answers.
Oh, he really does.
Yeah,
I people that don't know him, think we're nuts,
that's
but
okay. A lot of people think I'm nuts and I don't care.
yeah, but it's true. I mean, we have conversations with him. I mean, things come to mind, and scripture comes to mind, and uh, it's just like having coffee with somebody at times.
Well, and so you get angry at him, because I did after Marie died. I really did get angry at him. And I
yeah,
think that's, part of the grief process, because I
sure,
knew that the only one that could have saved her was him, and he didn't.
yeah,
And and now
yeah,
I'm so grateful she's missed out on so much, you know, of the
yeah.
bad stuff that could have gone on in life. And I never thought I'd say that. But the older I get, the closer more I think about heaven, and I love that.
Yeah, I do too. Hey, let's talk about that first book. I mentioned it in your introduction, that the something at Toodles. Is that what it's called? Toodle?
No, now it's called What About Cimarron?
Oh, okay.
Now,
Now, okay.
yeah, but the original was Tragedy on the Tootle.
Yeah,
And that whole thing was definitely a God thing, because people struggle for years to get a book published. And he gave me the right people at the right time in the right place, and put that whole together. And it was the story. We could watch the mountain. We were watching the mountain pre-explosion.
yeah,
And because we could see this big, Bill, it was incredible. It was like this gray column of smoke going straight up in the air, and it wasn't just smoke. It was,
wow.
and it was 5 miles up before it would start to
Holy
feather out.
cow.
We watched people. I don't know. It's a miracle people weren't killed on the highways. But when the mountain erupted, my first thought was there was a horse in that, a horse and a little girl and a young girl in there. And so from then on, I just kept collecting everything. And we had been up to the Tootle many times. We'd camped up there, loved it at Spirit Lake. So it was very personal for us.
Yeah, yeah,
So I wrote that book and then went to a writer's conference, my first writer conference at that point in time. And the whole career began. And I knew that I was where I needed to be, that I dreamed about it. I wanted to write horse books for girls for years. But you know how you someday I'll? Well, my someday I'll came, and I did. And God founded a home, and it was with Baker Publishing, and they in their children's adventure series, Tragedy on the Tootle. And now it's What About Cimarron? And it's still in print.
wow. That's exciting. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, it's just amazing that book. And so then Bethany, they canceled. They didn't do anymore. I had another one ready for, that I wanted to sell to them, and they said no, they weren't going to do any more children's books. But Bethany picked it up, and that's really started the whole thing going. I've now written 21 children's books for horses.
Wow. Isn't that neat?
Isn't it
That is
though?
so neat. It
You
really
know,
is. Do you ever get a chance to talk to the children that have, or the kids that have read the books and
oh yeah.
how they feel about them and
And I
so
get
forth?
wonderful letters, you know,
Oh,
because the first series was about horse racing.
oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, and so that one was, and then the second series is about a young girl who wants to jump in the Olympics, but she doesn't even own a horse. So I loved writing for girls, and I loved going into schools and talking about writing and all that. And I did that, and then I
Yeah,
started writing for adults soon after, or about that same time. So
yeah, we treated our daughter to writing lessons and all of that, and she just loved it. She really did.
young
There's something
girls have
about girls and
real,
horses.
yep, there is. It's just a gift that God has given us. So
Yeah, yeah. You also wrote, speaking of horses, you wrote a book about horses being a therapy kind of animal for
that's
prisoners. Did you not?
yes, and that's my adult horse book. And so, but one of the fun things when I wrote the kids' first book, I got to go to the Kentucky Derby and we did the whole circuit. I mean, I've gotten to do fun, wonderful things because because I'm a writer. And then this one for can't even think of the title right now. Isn't that great?
Oh,
Anyway,
you
we
got 90 of them out there, so
know 125 or more now.
120. Then I got to update your thing
Yeah,
because it only says 80.
no,
And
no,
I
there's
know you're
than
fibbing
80
about
now.
that.
But that one, we toured a prison back in New York that was the first prison to have a rescue program for beds. That they bring them there, and then the people in the prison learn to deal with the horses and train the horses and do all of that. So that was the first prison they did that, and that was quite an experience.
I
So was
bet it was.
going to the Kentucky Derby. I mean, it's just unreal the wonderful things I've gotten to do.
Uh, did you get a chance to speak with any of the prisoners who have used the horses?
Oh yes.
And
And the interesting
what are
thing
their
was
reactions?
there was a young man there who had pretty much done, because I already had my character in mind and had written part of it. I wrote that young man's story,
Really?
unknown to me. I didn't know him from anything until I
Yeah,
got to that
there's.
prison. And then the man who was in charge of the thoroughbred program he said, you can talk to any people here. I've asked anybody if they would like to talk with you. And so I spent we were there 2 days, one of the afternoons talking with prisoners.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was fascinating.
Is there any of them that particularly impressed you that
Yeah,
you
this
could tell
young
me about
man
them?
um who I wrote his story, he had his own business. He was rare and go. He was doing everything. He was engaged. He had his life all on track. And he rode his motorcycle one afternoon after having had a couple of beers. He said, you know, I'm honest with you. I only had a couple, but it slowed my reactions enough that when we hit that intersection, the accident happened and I'm in for manslaughter.
Oh, wow.
You know, he said, it was my fault. He said, I knew better. I did, but it was an incredible thing. Some of the things that some of the prisoners told me.
Yeah.
And one of the neat things, and I've written about that too, is I saw it was an open. Their doors were open. It wasn't cells. It was a training for. They trained people for optometrists. No, to make eyeglasses and send
Yeah.
them all over the world. They said if you don't have a job to go home to, you know, a
Yeah.
skill. And
Sure.
so I so admire the man who ran that prison. He really And he said to me when I met him, he said, I have one favor to ask, that you will not write bad things about us. Well, I thought, why would I do that? There's too much good to write about. And because he said too many people have toured and then torn them apart. And I said, no, you're doing everything. You're doing everything that I think should be done. And I think this is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the horses and the whole thing, it was quite an incredible experience. And I've had those all the way through. God provides
Wow.
them for me so that I have these wonderful things to write about.
Um,
And it's called Breaking Free. The
okay.
title came Breaking Free. One of my favorite horse books, I'll tell you.
Yeah. I'm just, I'm thinking about this idea that these are, you got to say 125 books out there. There are 125 separate stories. There are 100, probably 1,000 different characters. Who knows?
Probably,
But
I don't know.
yeah, do you sense a kind of uh, trajectory to your writing that ties all these 125 together in some way?
Sure, because they're all faith-based. Faith-based. I can't write something that isn't. And one of the editors explained that to me. She said, whether you write in the Christian market or whether you write in a non-Christian market, the whole bigger market, she said, your stories are going to have that because that's who you are.
Yeah.
And so I tell people I don't have to write in the Christian market to have my faith come through in the stories and the faith of the characters and the struggles of the characters. And so many things that people have said that I have seen come true. And then I've been passing that on to newer writers. You write who you are, and when I first started writing, the Christian market was such a small thing, but it's grown up, and our publishers are being published in all, bookstores all over everywhere too. I mean, published but sold. And I'm convinced that God uses all of us where he puts us all where he wants us to be, and uses us, if we're willing, the way he wants to use us.
Have you seen the publishing market change since 1982, and
Slightly.
how have you kept up with it?
I don't know. I just keep doing what I'm doing, and I've got agents who help take care of me. And Wendy Lawton is my agent. She does such a good job taking care of me. Janet Grant is another. I started out with her too. I mean, I've had agents, I've had publishers. I've been published with Bethany since 92, 93, something like that.
Yeah.
And so all my historicals have been through Bethany. Contemporaries then have been through a couple other publishers.
Mm-hmm.
I like writing contemporaries too. I mean, come on, I've done kids, and I've done women's fiction, and I've done series and historicals and in different periods, and I covered a lot of territory.
No, you really have. And, um, God is working in each one of those areas. And so he's he's using you to work in all of those areas. Do you see any new horizons that you want to gallop across coming up?
Yes, I would love to have a movie. Yes, I would love to. I've done a play that was based on the Red River series, and
Uh-huh.
played in Drayton, which was they said that I copied them, but Blessing is right near Drayton, North Dakota, and they put together a play, and it ran for 2 years, and that was
No kidding.
phenomenal. What a treat! I mean, oh my gosh. And of course, there's so many incredible stories behind so many stories. And And so I've done that, and I've written about each of the kinds of books that I've wanted to write.
Yeah.
And I think probably the having a movie or screen something is a major dream yet that hasn't happened.
And when you say you'd like a movie done, do you want one done on a one of your previous works, or do you want to write a whole new
No, I have several.
story for a movie?
No, I based on previous works. I took an act one class for one weekend, 4-day weekend, and I learned that because I thought
Yeah,
I'd like to write, change the my book into into a movie, a script. And what I learned was that I didn't have time to learn to do it because I was too busy writing. So I've learned a lot about what it takes, but I think for a change, that was really a God guiding thing, because you have to be able to give your all to something, and my all would get split in more pieces than it already does, and that wasn't going to help a lot. So
yeah. Looking back on all your works, I mean, is there one of them that kind of stands out as the one you're kind of most proud of, or the most where you feel you're really given the most, or?
there are 21 books in the series, in the Red River series. We've called it, or people refer to it as the Blessing series or the Ingeborg series. I get letters saying, they're my family, because that's the way I feel. When I quit writing Ingeborg, I was saying goodbye to a very important part of my family. Not goodbye, because I could pick it up and read it anytime, but yeah, there's one book, Heaven Sent Rain, that I deliberately wrote it as a possible to include the things that would make a good possible script. So there's that one. I would love to. I have several series, three book series and 4 book series, and probably from some of those would be um, a good place to go. I think it would be very hard, except for um, if somebody were to do a movie with Ingeborg, because that goes so long, it would be others like
A
Jeanette or
series. I would expect a
yeah.
series.
So I don't know. I just keep praying and hoping, and that's a dream.
Yeah,
And keep writing.
yeah. No, I know you keep writing it. You said you're working on 2 of them right now, right? That you
Well, I've got
kind of life got in the way.
but you know what it's like. You're dreaming on this one, you're researching on this one, and you're writing on this one, and so they all overlap, and that's just seems to way it be. I've been very blessed in that I get to keep doing that, but I'm really blessed now because I also get to have a writing partner, and at this stage with the crazy life going on, I'm really grateful to have Kirsty Heron writing with me. And so we've this series is with her name is on this one too, with Kirsty Giron and Giron, and she's a dream. And she started reading my books when she was 12.
Oh my goodness.
I just think God laughs sometimes when he starts something in, and he looks ahead and he knows what's going to happen, and he just, it's got to make him laugh. Makes
Yeah.
me laugh.
Now, where your writing partner, is she close by where you guys
No,
can talk, or is she?
we haven't seen, well, we've met for years. I mean, at different writers conferences and things, and she's about 2 hours away, but we're pretty good at brainstorming on the phone. She has a little boy, a little guy, a little 3-year-old,
Oh,
and so it's difficult sometimes, but um, God just keeps providing.
yeah,
I and
yeah,
I guess I just have to keep saying that because he does.
Isn't that neat? It just kind of comes out. The here's my problems. I don't want this to end, and I'm starting to draw blanks, and I hate to draw blanks. You said it, that you're not going to write any of the Ingeborg anymore. When you said goodbye to that family. What caused you to decide that 21 was enough?
Well, Bethany had been publishing those all those years,
Yeah.
and they, you don't stop before you stop before it starts to fall apart.
Yeah.
So they asked if I would close with that last one,
Okay.
and so I knew that I had to tie up Ingeborg's life and other people's life, because I promised my readers I was never going to write Ingeborg's death. They'd asked me that, what are you going to do when you have to write Ingeborg died? And I said, I'm not going to do that. I refuse to do that. And so we came up with a way around that. And so her book, Vow to Cherish, or Blessings to Cherish, is it's a standalone because it's happened several years after the other books, and it had to tie up all of these.
My goodness.
20 books of loose ends
you've got there, I think.
And so that was interesting to write that. And this is one of the funny things that just cracked me up.
Yeah.
I have gotten letters from people saying, well, we never really we never saw Roald die. Are you sure maybe he's going to come back? And they kept saying, he's going to come back in another book. So I just know he's going to come back. And I don't know, younger people don't know this, but I just keep saying, I did not, I don't write, soap operas. And what was I can't think of the name of it right now. The one, it was set in Texas and everywhere, and years ago, and it went on and on and on. And I don't write that. And people die.
Lonesome Dove?
I mean, what?
Are you talking about Lonesome Dove or something?
No, not Lonesome Dove. This is something else, because it was really an ongoing soap opera.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
I don't write that. He's not coming back. He had, you saw the bit from the mule and the pocket, the knife from his pocket, and that was all that was left. It was a blizzard. The wolves got him. Sorry, it's done. He's not coming back. And I love it when I'm speaking, and and I love telling the stories behind the stories, because they're fascinating. It's crazy. People are just, yeah, there always are.
Yeah. Now, a good book, when you have a good book, you don't want it to end.
No,
you just don't want to.
I agree.
And you take these people to your heart. And that's the beauty of not only reading good fiction, but it's the beauty of writing good fiction.
Yeah.
These characters are living, breathing people.
They were to me, or they are to me. I mean, they still are. That's the other good thing, is that they can keep on living because they're in books.
Yeah, that's right. And now they're on their internet, so they can keep on living worldwide.
Ebooks will keep on going, so they're in print. By the way, you asked me the changes that I've seen. That's one of the majors, is ebook.
That's the big one.
I mean, and I can remember them thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to ruin the publishing world, blah, 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 blah. No, it just made it even better.
Yeah.
So, there's been a lot of changes.
Have you ever had a character that is just kind of take off on their own?
They all do.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about that.
I start to, okay, good example. When I finished the first series, and finished that series, I needed the second series for kids. This is for kids, to be different. And I created this character in my mind which is what I always do, and I write down all about them, and I care. And then I start the story, and the girl that lived that story was not the girl that I started out thinking who she was going to be. She just took off and she was her own self, and that's the way it was. And that's the way it is with all of the characters. And people who try to make their character fit the story or vice versa, they get in trouble. Because if you go along and you let the character tell their story, you're going to have a good book.
Yeah, an author kind of starts out with a kind of a, I don't know, the ground on which the characters will roam, and a couple of characters, and then bang, it takes off. I mean, they
Yeah,
just start
it
running,
does.
they start arguing with one another. It's wild for people
It is. And for
watching
people,
this who don't write. Try it. It's a kick. It really
yeah.
is.
And if you try to make it go your way, your story's going to go flat.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
No,
you just, well, and
you
I say,
gotta,
create the character, you start the story, and you hang on for the ride.
yeah, and you got to give them their energy so they can run.
And
Uh,
like Ingeborg, who is so very real to so many people, including me, I based her, and I usually don't do this, on a combination of my mother and her older sister Inga. And I just keep saying, I want to be Ingeborg when I grow up. And somebody, well, I know, but
have you made it yet? I mean,
yes, people think I have, so they've
no,
told me.
I don't
So
think so. I think you got another lifetime to go.
I
You
hope so.
really do. You're just so full of life and so full of these stories and so full of reasons to write them, which is even more important. God's not only given you that gift and talent, but he's given you that reason for doing it, which is proclaiming him, in all of us, and how different we all are, and yet how same he is. And I mean, it's remarkable, the miracles of that he works in people's lives.
I think one of the things that thrills me the most are the letters that I've gotten from people who read different books, but especially the Red River books, or the Blessing books, because it went on so long. It became such a family to people. I mean, it's their family, and because it's Norwegians, and I based it, people write to me and they say, it's like you wrote my family story.
Wow.
I
Isn't
mean,
that something?
isn't that incredible?
Yeah, that
And
is.
people have sent me their family stories too, and I just feel so incredibly blessed to get to be part of people's lives like this.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, we're incredibly blessed because God has uh, given us you. You know, and I'm saying that with all sincerity because these people who read your books and absorb them and absorb the families and the reason they're so tied to this is because they see themselves in it. And, the way you solve a problem maybe end up the way they solve a problem in their own lives. So, yeah, it really is. Well, I'll tell you, I love you, Sweet Pea. I really do. You're one of my favorite people. When
Thank
we
you.
gathered over at the Mulligan Room and we're singing
Wasn't
our
that
hearts out and
fun?
all that.
Oh,
Let's do that again.
yes. And Joe is still alive, but I'm not sure if she's got the strength anymore to go over there this summer.
Oh,
But
this, these,
COVID sure messed up a lot of things, but
it really did. It really did. And well,
yeah,
let's just leave it at that for now.
that's right.
Yeah. Anyway, you have a wonderful day. You have a
Thanks, Bill.
wonderful,
Thank you for inviting me on this.
and
And
I'll
people,
be praying for Wayne,
thank you.
and I'll be praying for you because you need
Thank you.
strength.
Well, and I just want to tell people, come and see me on Facebook. I'd love to meet with you on Facebook. And that's just Lauraine Snelling, author. And I have a website, larainesnelling.com. And I love meeting my readers. I just love that.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
And I bet they love meeting you as well. So,
Well, we've sure had fun things go on.
yeah. So God
Thank
bless you and have a
you too.
wonderful
Thanks,
night and
Bill.
day, and talk to you later.
All
Okay.
right. Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Our next visitor is a guy with a very common name, but has an extraordinary ministry. For the past 30 years, he's taught, promoted, and shown films conceived and created by teens and young adults. Then yearly, he presents the films at his ministry's answer to the Oscars. You'll love this visit. And since his ministry is nation and worldwide, you might want your kids to hear it too. Until next time, be a creative Christian.